Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Rabbi Stephen here. Hope you have had a good week and are being very, very productive. So we had a very good weekend last weekend. Just kind of want to fill you in. We had a Tat Shabbat at 5:30, 5:45. We had some new families, and welcome to them, Brian and Nadego, and also Jane and Ernie. Hope you join us permanently. And then we had a regular Friday night Shabbat, and then we had a kid-friendly Shabbat, 9:45. Almost had a minyan. And I would like to invite everybody to show up for a Saturday morning sometime. My wife made an interesting comment, and it really kind of echoes the way I feel about Saturday morning services. It's kind of a different vibe. The only way to explain it is for you to come and see. It's kind of more congenial. It's a longer service, but we do our best to make it interesting. We have a little discussion. We use the guitar, so I know it's longer, but we do what we can to make it interesting as well. And I would like to make a very special shout out to Susan Bardis and her kids, Alexis and Jacob. They were at the synagogue doing something every day, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Alexis is doing a great job. She came up, she helped me lead the services, and Susan, as the president of the PTO, she's being very helpful, letting everybody know what's going on, and great for her. And Jacob is doing a great job of paying attention and being involved. So thank you, everybody. We have Hanukkah coming up next week. We have the first candle lighting in Murrieta at the Murrieta Civic Center off of, I believe it's, I don't know. I'm not going to say and give you the wrong information, but it's at the Civic Center. They got a big Hanukkah menorah there, and we're looking forward to the first night, Tuesday, Wednesday night. It's the second candle lighting will be at Canyon Lake, and hope all of you can make it to one of the two nights. Okay. So this particular portion, okay, Vayeishev. So Jacob is settling in the land, and he's got his kids. He's got 11. Actually, he's got 12. He's got Benjamin. Benjamin was born. Rachel, his favorite wife, died in childbirth. So Joseph is his favorite son. So it starts out with Joseph. He's 17 years old. And his older brothers, everybody except for Benjamin, who's still kind of young and being weaned by Rachel's servant, I believe it was Bilhah. And Jacob says to Joseph, go out and check on your other brothers, see how they're doing. Well, there's a lot of implications here. First of all, the other brothers were working. Joseph was not. He was, and he's described as a na'ar, a youth, but actually he's kind of immature. He's kind of a brat. He's a spoiled brat. He was the favorite son. He gets to stay home with dad and study Torah, do whatever. He's also kind of the go-between, tell me how they're doing. And he's kind of a little bit of a tattletale, right? Telling dad what the other brothers are doing. So there's some question as to what actually he was doing. There was some talk that the brothers, the sons of Leah, who would be, Reuven, Shimon, Levi, and Judah, and I believe Issachar, and I'll get back to you on that one. But that they were kind of harassing, bullying the other sons who were sons of Bilhah and Zilpah. Really they were kind of mistresses. They weren't really wives. I mean, they're called, Zilpah and Bilhah are referred to as wives later on, but when they were born, they were really kind of like mistresses. So the brothers kind of felt, there's some talk whether the brothers kind of felt that they were less in their eyes, so they were kind of bullying them a little bit, and Jacob was bringing back a report about that. There's also talk that the brothers were kind of sloughing off a little bit, and Jacob was kind of being a little bit of a tattletale. And we kind of see how this affects him later on. So the brothers really did not have a very good feeling about Joseph. And in fact, at one point they talk about the word peace, which in Hebrew is shalom, shin, lamed, above with a dot on top that makes it a cholam or an oval, and then the mem sofit. But here, the word shalom is written without the vav, without the cholam, so it's kind of a decreased word. And the meaning of this, because remember, in the Torah, everything has a meaning. They don't just do things just because, we're writing this, we run out of space, let's just leave off the vav. No.
they left off the Vav for a reason, because it's a diminished type of a peace. So when the brothers looked at Joseph, they were being peaceful to him, but not really. Their peacefulness was not real sincere, because they knew the kid was a brat. He was a 17-year-old spoiled brat. To compound matters, and Joseph really was kind of a young mind, because what does he do? He has a couple of prophetic dreams, and he goes and tells the brothers. Now, part of Jewish law, or Jewish halacha, or the tradition says that if you have a prophetic dream, you don't hide it, no matter what it says. So Joseph goes to his brothers and says, hey, I had a dream that we had 7 sheaths, that each of us had a sheath, or 12 sheaths, and your sheath of wheat bowed down to mine. Well, this didn't, really do well with his relationship with the brothers. And, to compound matters, he also tells them, he goes, well, I had another dream that, the stars in the sky bowed down to me, and the sun and the moon. Well, the stars were the brothers. The sun and the moon was his father and mother. Well, who was his mother? Now that Rachel was gone, or had died, they said that his mother was her handmaid, Bilhah, who had basically weaned him and raised him after she died in childbirth with Benjamin. So was he right in telling the prophecy, or was he wrong because he was obligated to tell people about his prophetic dream, or was he wrong because he was making matters worse? Who knows? The point is that this is what was done. So he comes out to check on his brothers, and it's they say it was a couple of days. It was a far journey. And what did they do? At this point, they've had it with him, because now he's wearing this multicolored tunic that Jacob, his father, Yaakov, had given him. And the multicolored coat back then was indicative of a prince, or royalty, or nobility, or a minister, or somebody in high office. So they couldn't handle it anymore. They threw him into a pit. Some of the brothers wanted to actually kill him. Guess who? Shimon and Levi wanted to kill him. And Reuben, the oldest son, intervened and said, no, we don't want to do that. And then Reuben had to leave for a little bit, comes back, while Joseph is sitting in a pit, awaiting for his fate. The brothers are off eating. Meanwhile, a caravan of Ishmaelites pass by, see him in the pit, grab him, and take him into slavery. And some people say that he was handed off from people to people. The Ishmaelites sold him to the Midianites, who sold him to the Midianites, who basically sold him to the Egyptians. Some people say they were all one and the same. It was just the Ishmaelites that carried him off to Egypt, on their way to sell spices or whatever. So now they don't know what to do. The brothers see that the pit is empty. They take his tunic, they dip it in like a sheep's blood and give it to their father, who's very upset. Yaakov is very upset that his favorite son is gone. He rents his clothes, he mourns and everything. And the brothers are like, we don't know what happened. But they tell him that an animal, and they don't know what happened, but an animal must have got to him and ripped him apart. But all that's left is his bloody tunic. Meanwhile, here's Joseph in the court of Pharaoh, and he wins favor with one of his ministers, his chief minister, his prime minister, Potiphar. Is brought into his house, and now he's managing his household. Well, what happens? Well, here's Joseph, spreading kind of gossip. And what happens to him? Potiphar's wife takes a liking to him because he curls his hair. He's kind of a good-looking kid. 18, maybe he learned to be an adult a little bit. He's been in there for 3 years. And Potiphar's wife being left at home while Potiphar, the minister, is off doing business, and she wants him. He has a sense of morality. He won't succumb to her seduction or to her advances. So he runs out of the house. When she advances toward him, he grabs his garment. And not wanting to feel like she's been made a fool of, she says, "Well, look, he tried to molest me, and look, here's his garment, that I was able to that I ripped off of him." And hearing that an alien, because the Egyptians were basically xenophobes, they did not like foreigners. Potiphar was kind of between a rock and a hard place, and typically Joseph, as having assaulted a noble's wife, would have been put to death. But Potiphar they say Potiphar kind of knew better. That's why he took him to what would be seen as kind of a white-collared prison, where some of the courts wrongdoers were put, just kind of as a temporary place or whatever. But it was kind of a white collar prison because Potiphar knew that his wife could kind of engage in stuff like that. Why did he tolerate her? Well, maybe she was a daughter of a noble. He couldn't do anything. Or maybe he didn't want to look ridiculous because if he divorced her, people would say, why? She's sleeping around with guys behind his back. That wouldn't look good. So he did that. So he kind of put him in a prison. And they say that Potiphar was the chief butcher, but he was also chief of prisons too. So he had that influence. So as it turns out, Joseph wins favor there, and he's kind of he's kind of a special person, in prison. He's kind of a trustee, and he gets to overlook things. Well, it comes to the point where two of the king's ministers, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker, were also put down there. They had a couple of dreams, which Joseph interprets correctly, that the cupbearer who held the wine was going to be reinstated. The chief baker, and they say that the chief cupbearer, there was a fly in the wine, not a big deal. But with the baker, they baked a pebble into his bread, which Pharaoh could have choked on, so he's put to death. And that's really kind of how the portion ends, leaving us hanging. So we know what's going to happen next week, and we'll get there. In the meantime, hope you had a great week. Shabbat Shalom. Look forward to seeing you in services. This week we have Rabbi Nora from Havarim, the Reform congregation, who's going to be overseeing and taking care of the family service. Hope you show up. It should be fun. Shabbat Shalom.